for those of you who don't know out there, we've worked very close with Doug Van Zandt of Extreme Fire and Rescue, and one thing that differentiates Extreme from other safety crews is they're running a different extinguisher chemical than a lot of other crews. They
run one that'll put out both electrical and chemical, correct?
They run what they call it's either a cold fire or a fire aid. I'm not sure which chemical they're on right now, but it's more of a foam, and it actually takes the heat away from the fire instead of smothering it. So when you guys had Kenny Wallace on, he talked about his fire and how he had to hold his breath because they were going to use dry chem.
Right.
This chemical that Doug's using and loading his extinguishers with, that unfortunately I had to use this week, it's an awesome
way
setup.
more driver friendly.
It's driver friendly,
crew friendly.
It's person friendly as well as chassis friendly, because a lot of people don't realize when you set off a dry chem extinguisher, that dry chem is going to suffocate everything, including the driver. So you've got to, as a driver or anyone near it, you've got to hold your breath. But it also
very corrosive
on the chassis. We're running these aluminum heads and aluminum blocks on some of these cars, and it'll eat that up unless you get it cleaned off completely. And who wants to take a pressure wash of the internals of their engine?
Right.
It's not a good combination.
Right.
So in doing that now, the system that we received was not the chemical we wanted on board, not just for the safety of Matthew and the safety of the other racers, because really you look at it, when you have a fire, it's not just your driver that's got to deal with it.
Right. You got a crew there working on.
You've got the fire crew or the safety crew.
Right.
You've got people,
crew members
coming out, as well as other racers, because you start talking, you're carrying around 16 to 30 some gallons of either race fuel or methanol. Race fuel is extremely volatile. You've got to control that.
And methanol takes a certain chemical to put out, because there's chemicals that don't work on, whether it's electrical, fuel, or methanol, whatever. I mean, you've got to have the right stuff. And so far, Extreme has been on top of that. And, the guys at Sunset are really stepping their game up.
Exactly.
And it's good to see, because we don't have that incident like we had at Bakersfield a couple weeks ago.
Yep.
And I'll tell you right now, I know Scott Schweitzer, the owner of Bakersfield. I know him, and we saw the interview he did with Billy Simpkins from the Be Tough magazine. And if Scott says he's going to get that situation corrected, I'll guarantee you Scott will get that situation corrected. He's one of those guys that he's a racer's owner. He'll take care of his people, take care of his drivers, and I feel totally confident saying that you won't see another incident like that at his racetrack.
And I agree with you, but it's one of those things of, it takes seconds to get to the car, but in seconds a lot can happen. I mean, and my background before I got into racing, I was in emergency services, so I know what seconds can do.
Right.
And it's one of those things. Seconds count. You've got to be prepared. And take that. I took when I was listening to Kenny Wallace talk with you guys, I took that to heart. You've got to prepare yourself to be self-sufficient. I mean, and by being self-sufficient, as racers, when we go to the track, we take our own tires, we take our own tools, we take our own tires, spare parts, etc. We're self-sufficient when we get there, with the exception of safety. Why should safety be any different?
Right. Now, let me ask you a question, and I've asked this to a few people, and I've gotten multiple different answers. Some absolutely surprised me. Some disappointed me. Okay? As a crew chief on a race car, would you have a problem with a racetrack mandating onboard suppression systems?
I go back and forth on that. I see both sides of it, but for me personally, I would rather have an onboard suppression system on the car, because it's just one more. Granted, we start talking about all these race cars. You take away everything. All the race car is transferring weight from one wheel to another. You're mandating a fire suppression system. That's going to mandate weight, and that's what people see is, oh, you're making the car heavier. Well, not necessarily.
Not that much, though.
If you do, but you think guys in Lucas,
I know,
when they make an adjustment, they're moving a 2-pound chunk of lead,
right?
5-pound chunk of lead. You start talking, you're adding weight to the car. That's fine in my book, as a crew chief. That's fine. I'll put the weight where I want it. That's one less. And here's the other thing too. That's one less piece of lead that I have on the car that is held on by 2 bolts. Now, we had a situation this last week, and I don't know if you caught it. where lead actually came off of a car under green.
Right.
That to me is a very scary situation. As a crew chief and working on the safety crew, I've had good friends that have caught transmissions through their cars.
I remember that very well.
And
you figure even if it is a 10-pound chunk of lead and that's moving at 50 miles an hour,
how much energy does that have?
Right. If whatever it hits, it's going to hit hard. Now, whether that's a fan in the stands, whether it's just a wall or another driver's car, a radiator into the cockpit, I mean, you can't, it's not just nuts and bolts with race cars. It's safety. It's making sure everything is right. I get certain track conditions can, create something like that, but lead falling off a race car is something that should only happen once, if ever.
And I don't ever want to see it happen. I mean, one thing, part of my nut and bolt run every week is 3/4 inch wrench. I grab the weights.
Mm-hmm.
Every single piece of lead on that car gets touched.
Mm-hmm.
And then I grab on the weight clamps, grab the Allen key, hit them just to check. That along, weight, checking your weights to make sure they are secured to the car is just like checking your seat belts. Granted, it's probably not going to hurt your driver, but we're all family. We need to take care of each other.
Right.
And that's where, when the lead, and it needs to be painted white so we can see it.
Absolutely.
I mean,
absolutely.
That was one thing, from my perspective, that lead was hard to see.
Mm-hmm.
We couldn't tell what it was. Luckily, one of the other, Rick caught it and got it off the track.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like a header that gets dirty and you can see it because it's massive, or an exhaust pipe.
That it gets camouflaged into the track so much.
Exactly.
I mean, if it's not painted white,
And even then, when you wash your car, wash your lead off.
Make sure it's painted.
We got to take care of each other.
Make sure it's painted. I mean, all the rules state, fluorescent orange, white, silver. I mean, make it stand out if it does come off the car, Yeah, I agree 100%. So this next week, Dragger Performance taking it off. Are you going to be back with Extreme the track, or?
We'll see where I pop up. I've got Combine still in the field with work, so I kind of need to keep my schedule open.
Right.
We'll see where I pop up, but you can rest assured that somehow racing will be involved in my weekend.
I'm sure it will, whether it's in the shop or at the track or part of the fire crew. But speaking of this week at Willamette Speedway, we have
You've got the Wingless Sprint
Tour.
Tour.
Wingless Sprint Tour. Yeah, the ODSS and the what is that? The Northwest Wingless Tour and WWT and ODSS coming to Willamette Speedway. Wingless sprint cars, crazy. It's sideways.
It's going to be insane to see what happens.
It's sideways action. I mean, those guys are throwing it sideways just right past the flag stand, and they back them in. One thing I'm excited to see is, and you've heard us talk about her on the show, is Lindsey Barney.
Yes.
This young lady is a race car driver, and she is. I have no doubt, full confidence saying that you'll see her at the next level in sprint cars.
Absolutely.
She's going to be there. Fun to watch. Also on hand will be the Super Sports, the Street Stocks, and I believe Hornets. 4 classes now. The Extreme late models were canceled, and I think that's simply just a kind of a car count thing. Without the normal late models being there, I don't think they had enough to come in as a full show. I get it. It's kind of one of those things that it's either going to grow or die, and this is the season that kind of determines it.
Mm-hmm. And it's unfortunate. You never want to see that happen to a class.
No, you don't.
Because racing's fun and racing's racing, but it's.
Now let me talk to you about that. The Northwest, the crate series, because and this is it's an argument that will never end. Open motors versus crate motors. Now there's guys that live and die by crate motors. There's guys that live and die by the open motors. You'll never see a crate motor in the 37 car, ever.
Or will you?
Absolutely not. That's not Rob Maya's style, and I'll say it right now. I'd bet $100 right now to a dime you'd never see a crate motor in that car. That being said, we're watching crate motors be very, very competitive against the opens. I can see why, and I can see why that crate series is kind of in the state that it's in. Do you need a full crate series when you got guys that are that competitive with crate motors against opens? Is that why? Do you think that's what people are looking at that are in those crate cars? Because we're seeing a lot of them against the open cars.
You got to look at it from a couple of perspectives. I mean, Matthew made the switch this last year to jump into a 604 and sell his track record holding open motor. That was a big step, even for me as a crew chief. I like the power. I like having that power if you need it. Granted,
do you want a track record or do you want a strawberry cup?
I don't have either. He's got He's got both of them.
You know what I mean? As a crew chief, though, I'm just saying.
But at the same time,
results.
You got to look at it. Track conditions. Would we have would we have been competitive with that crate motor on that track, on the same track that was the open motor track? I mean, it's all
I'll say it. No, there's 3 or 4 times a year where if you don't show up with an open motor, you're going to get beat. Now, when it's 90 degrees in August and the track's dry as a bone, what do you want? Do you want that open motor with all that power, or do you want something that's going to hook up? I mean, that's the argument, and I get it, and that's what I love about it. I'm not knocking either one. I love the moat motors. I mean, who doesn't love the open motors, really?
Exactly.
I mean, John Duty pushing almost 930 horse or whatever it is, and Rob Maya with 800 plus, and these guys are just these monster motors that just sound just like, incredible, the noise they make and the speed they produce. And you got Joey Tanner in that 67 car with half the horsepower winning races. I mean, when it's dry slick, do the crate cars truly have an advantage?
Well, in my personal opinion, it's not just about the motor. It's about how you take what's coming out of the motor and transfer it to the ground. So
okay. So that being said, when you've got a crate motor that doesn't produce as much power with a good setup under you, are you going to hook that up to a dry slick track easier, or that 900 horse with a good setup? I mean, that's the argument, and we've seen Brian Kronk, we've seen Joey Tanner, and a couple other drivers kind of kill that argument. I mean, truly. Now, does Joey Tanner want to? Joey Tanner will take an open motor all day long over a crate car. Mm-hmm. That's what he likes. That's his style. He's in that group with Rob Maya, but he does a phenomenal job with that crate motor.
And that's the thing.
And it's not horsepower. And Willamette Speedway is not a horsepower racetrack. It never has been, and right now I'll say it probably never will be. It is setup. Now, putting the power on the ground, that's what that setup's for.
You got to think it's a double-edged sword. It's
Absolutely.
about getting the power to the ground and taking the power away from the ground. Because here's the thing, and one thing I've noticed is that affects it is your compression braking.
Right.
That the crate motors will absolutely destroy an open motor any day of the week when it comes to compression braking. It's just a fact. It's the way it is. You're running a low compression motor versus a high compression, high horsepower motor. When you let off, you can just dump the gas and you're fine. Whereas you dump the gas in an open motor, you're going to break the contact patch and away you go. But
we've also seen if there's a 3-inch cushion off the wall, guys like Rob Maya and the guys that go upstairs are going to be there getting a hold of something.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's an argument that will never end. Now in California, if you start looking down that way, you're starting to see the transition go more towards the crate motor side. They're winning more
mm-hmm.
races. It fits what they do down there, given the temperatures that they race in, a lot harder than what we have. A lot more dry slick condition at every track you go to.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fun argument to even start because
mm-hmm.
you get guys that are so passionate on both sides about, no, you got to have a crate to win, or no, crate motors are for girls, or you know what I mean. I mean, it's how it usually goes. It's one extreme to the other. I'm one of those guys that I look in the middle of that deal, and no one's ever going to win this argument. Because you got guys winning with crate motors. You got guys, setting track records and winning with open motors. Championships with open motors versus, you're never going to win this argument.
No, it's one of those arguments that's going to go around in a circle forever.
Forever.
And, in all honesty, a motor's a motor, a car's a car. It's the driver that makes it go.
Here, and I agree with you. Here's my
mm-hmm.
whole view on that, okay? My whole view on that is, I don't care what is under the hood. Setup is everything. Okay? And there are nights where, yes, less power is more.
Mm-hmm.
And who proved that any better than Bob Jeffrey in his V6? Now I know
yes.
I've
heard the stories.
22 starts. He picks up 18 wins in one season in 22 starts. 550 horse.